The roads are treacherous. We'll get tips from an area driving instructor on handling these icy conditions.
The historic second impeachment trial of former President Trump is now underway. I'm Natalie Brand on Capitol Hill with the debate over the constitutionality of this unprecedented trial.
The four states' most watched news starts now.
The wintry weather isn't letting up anytime soon. This is KOAM News at 5. Let's start with Nick Kelly for the latest on the weather.
You hit the nail right on the head, Dal. Well, it's nice to get a break in the action today, but winter weather advisories are going back into effect this evening and lasting at the latest until Thursday at 6 a.m. That's because Mother Nature wants to send another upper-level wave our way, kicking off freezing drizzle and maybe some pockets of sleet during the late evening and certainly going into tomorrow. Right now, though, the latest look at the Skywatch Storm Tracker just shows a lot of cloud cover throughout the day and maybe some random pockets of fog or mist. And while the radar is suggesting maybe some higher moisture aloft, trying to bring in some snow flurries across parts of southeast Kansas, that's going to likely make it down to the ground this freezing drizzle first as our next wave gets underway. Right now, temperatures, no surprise here, it's still cold. 15 in Iola, 20 in Webb City, 25 in Anderson. I see us eventually setting back into the teens once again tonight as the cloud cover remains thick and the freezing drizzle and even some pockets of flurries and sleet try to mix in as we head into tomorrow morning. We'll break down the next several days coming up in a bit, Dow.
All right, we'll catch you then. Thanks, Nick. Obviously, the winter weather has led to some dangerous road conditions. Driving on snow, however, is different than driving on ice. While both are slick and hazardous, officials say you can get a little more traction on snow than you can with ice. In either case, the Joplin Police Department says you need to play it safe.
Decrease your speed, decrease your following distance, allow several cars of distance between you and the vehicle in front of you to allow you to stop. And if you do lose control, try to maintain your composure, steer out of it if you can.
Tonight at 6, we're going to hear more from the JPD on what you need to know about driving in wintry weather and from a local towing company on the call volume they've seen over the last few days. Also, with this cold weather comes the risk of pipes in your home freezing, which could lead to costly and time-consuming repairs. Missouri American Water has some tips to avoid those frozen pipes. First thing you can do is let a small amount of water drip from the faucet. This keeps the water in the pipes flowing and less likely to freeze. You might also consider wrapping your pipes to keep them warmer.
Depending on the insulation of your house, you might want to think about wrapping those as well. I don't think pipe wrap is very expensive. And again, when you're looking at the expense of what a pipe burst could cost you in the long run, spending just a little bit of money for that extra peace of mind is well worth it.
If you do let your faucet drip, Missouri American Water suggests collecting that water to use for indoor plants. Now, today's KOAM News Now Insta poll. How do you feel about your school district's weather cancellation policy? Your options are cancels too often, doesn't cancel enough, or it's just fine. You can participate at KOAMNewsNow.com/vote or through the KOAM News Now mobile app. Results are updated live, and we're going to check in on the numbers later during this newscast. Then we'll have the final results on KOAM News at 6. History is in the making on Capitol Hill as the second impeachment trial of former President Trump kicks off in the Senate. The former president was charged with inciting the January 6th Capitol assault that resulted in the deaths of 5 people, including a Capitol police officer. Reporter Natalie Brand is on Capitol Hill as senators first consider the constitutionality of the trial.
In the same chamber that was stormed by a mob of rioters on January 6th, senators who were then eyewitnesses are now jurors in the historic second impeachment trial of former President Trump accused of inciting the insurrection.
The resolution is agreed to.
First, the Senate approved a resolution setting the rules. Then debate began over whether the proceedings are constitutional.
Senators are patriots. Senators are family men and women. They're fierce advocates for the great state in which they represent.
Mr. Trump's attorneys argue the Senate lacks the authority to try a president who's no longer in office, while impeachment managers, led by constitutional scholar Jamie Raskin, say that argument has been rejected by legal experts across the political spectrum.
This cannot be the future of America. We cannot have presidents inciting and mobilizing mob violence against our government
After the debate, senators will vote on the issue. Only a simple majority is required to move forward.
Starting Wednesday, which is exactly 5 weeks since the deadly Capitol riot, both sides will each have 16 hours over 2 days to present their cases.
Senior aides to the House impeachment manager said Tuesday they plan to present evidence nobody has seen before.
President Trump is singularly and directly responsible for inciting the assault on the Capitol.
In a pretrial brief, the former president's lawyers called the trial political theater. It's still unclear whether witnesses may be called, but the former president is not expected to appear. His attorneys rejected that request, calling it a public relations stunt. As the trial continues inside the Capitol, outside, the National Guard and Capitol Police remain on high security alert. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The Senate voted to approve the constitutionality of the trial. The Senate is expected to fall short of the required 2/3 votes to convict, which would require at least 17 Senate Republicans to join the Democrats. The National Transportation Safety Board today said the helicopter crash that killed basketball legend Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others in the hills of Southern California last year could have been prevented. Federal safety investigators blame the crash on the pilot's spatial disorientation, saying the pilot violated federal guidelines by flying in cloudy conditions where he likely became disoriented. A hacking attack on a water treatment plant is raising big questions about the vulnerability of critical facilities nationwide. Federal investigators are searching for a hacker who tried to poison the Oldsmar, Florida water system on Friday, just 15 miles from the Super Bowl. Officials say the intruder broke into the water treatment controls for about 5 minutes. The intent, they say, was to add too much of a dangerous chemical. A little bit later, using energy to make energy.
Flipping on a light can do more than brighten a room. I'm Ian Lee with a powerful discovery from scientists.
And next in Health Watch, a look at how some long-term care facilities are being left behind in the coronavirus vaccine rollout. Investigators from the World Health Organization failed to find the source of the coronavirus outbreak during their 4-week mission to the Chinese city of Wuhan. Experts also say it's very unlikely the virus leaked from a Chinese lab. They believe it originated in bats before being passed to people through another species of wild animal such as pangolin or rat. The U.S. accuses China of shrouding the outbreak in secrecy. Of the more than 42 million coronavirus vaccines administered so far, fewer than 3 million are known to have gone to residents of long-term care facilities. Nursing homes account for more than 1/3 of all COVID deaths in the country. Reporter Jonathan Vigliotti looks at the struggle to get vaccine doses at one residential care facility in Redwood City, California, and how a grocery chain stepped in to help.
Hi. Elisa Maliari-Tu is the executive director at Gordon Manor, responsible for the health and well-being of 58 residents. After COVID tore through her facility last year, she and her team enacted strict COVID protocols. They went about 7 months without a single case.
So to be clear, you're saying that since last spring, you've only had 2 residents test positive?
Right.
That's incredible.
Fear and the threat of coronavirus coming back in is definitely a motivator.
Gordon Manor enrolled in the federal government's vaccine program for long-term care facilities in October. But as that rollout stretched into January,
we had not received any communication whatsoever from anybody about when our turn was. It turns out that Safeway called, and Safeway was able to say, hi, we can come and do a clinic at your facility.
Finally, in late January, all but one of Gordon Manor's residents received their first dose of the vaccine before officials with the federal vaccination program even reached out. Among those vaccinated, 91-year-old Yolanda Baldini and 99-year-old Eunice Dalla Costa. They're sisters and roommates at Gordon Manor. On Monday, they got to visit outside with Yolanda's son, Dennis Baldini, for the first time since November.
Dennis, how relieved are you to know that your mother and your aunt are now vaccinated?
Oh, very relieved. Although, honestly, I think they're safer in here than I am out there.
And Malieri, too, says every resident here will get their second dose later this month. She is relieved, but she says she still worries for seniors that are home alone without anyone in their corner fighting for their shot at the vaccine. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Redwood City, California.
Seems high blood pressure can lead to heart rhythm disorders. According to a new study out of London, that is, researchers found that elevated blood pressure was associated with an increased risk of atrial fibrillation. The disorder can cause stroke, heart failure, dementia, and depression. Nick Kelly is up next with his complete 7-day forecast, and a little bit later, how Pfizer is trying to increase production of its coronavirus vaccine.
The KOA.
Sorry about that. While it was nice to see a break in the action for today, it's just a shame that we couldn't do anything about temperatures, really. We stayed cold just like yesterday. In fact, we dropped into the middle teens this morning, around 13 at Joplin Regional, and the warmest we could go today was 20 at the airport so far. Again, it was nice to get a break in the action. But our next wave's ready to roll in. That's why we have winter weather advisories back in effect in the blue until, let me get the proper expiration time up here for you, at the latest until Thursday, 6 a.m. So we've got freezing drizzle set to work back in here starting this evening and certainly during the overnight. Then it's going to try and mix in with some sleet and snow, light amounts of those at times throughout the day tomorrow. Even though it's mostly cloudy up top, we haven't seen anything result falling to the ground so far. And while the radar might suggest snow a lot, that is moisture that is starting to develop. And once it hits the ground, unfortunately, it'll start off again as freezing drizzle. So again, if you have to be on the roads this evening as that drizzle begins, just take your time and be very careful. 20 in Joplin, feels like 8 with a north breeze at about 12 miles per hour. As we move along, we can see temperatures across the region. Not much of a spread in temperatures here. 15 in Iola, 18 in Pittsburgh, 23 in Neosho, maybe some mid-20s once we hit Grove and Anderson. But everyone's going to gravitate back toward the teens, mainly the mid to upper teens, as we head into the overnight hours and into Wednesday morning. So let's look at our setup once again, widen the view out. At least we're not going to be alone in dealing with this next wave on the way. In fact, we have ice storm warnings clipping parts of northeast Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, and continuing along the Ohio River Valley. As at the surface, we've got plenty of cold air in place. There is no doubt about that, with high pressure in control. But upstairs, it's all about that strong upper level low, part of the polar vortex that broke away from the Arctic Circle. That is bringing in yet another subtle wave working in from the west. That is going to be our culprit for our increase in the freezing drizzle as we continue through the rest of the evening. You can see it picking up clearly by 10 o'clock tonight. And then as we head toward Wednesday morning, a little bit more moisture upstairs and maybe a little bit more colder air up top. We'll try to finally mix in some snow, maybe a little bit of light sleet at times as well. So we'll not have to deal with just freezing drizzle tomorrow. We'll watch for any periods of light sleet and light snow to change things up around here. But temperatures, they stay the same. 17 in the morning, 21 by noon, afternoon highs around 23. We're going to see all this activity wind down as we head toward Wednesday night and Thursday morning. If there's any amount of snow with this, it's going to be a dusting to maybe half an inch. And as far as ice amounts are concerned, we're going to keep everything between the glaze and a tenth of an inch. But still, it was amounts like these that led to messy roads Sunday and Monday. So we need to be mindful of that if we have to do any travel around the area. Once we get past a relatively quiet Thursday with maybe a few random sleet or snow showers, we'll stay quiet for Friday. Then we'll see our next wave out west, bring in another shot for snow on Saturday as temperatures continue to stay cold. 23 tomorrow, 24 Thursday, 21 on Friday. Teens as we go into early next week down, and potentially by early next week, lows around 0 to start each morning out.
Yeah, around 0 for the lows, and even the high is not going to get up as high as freezing for the next week. So it's going to be cold for a while.
Yeah, we got to hold out until next Wednesday or Thursday. That's when I can see us finally breaking the freezing mark.
That seems like a long way away.
Nick, we're going to get there at some point, though.
I'm sure we will eventually. Thanks, Nick. Hey, don't forget you can be the first to know about breaking weather alerts with KOAM Skywatch weather app. You can get those severe weather updates sent straight to your phone, and it doesn't cost a thing. It's available in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Again, free, the KOAM Skywatch weather app. Coming up, scientists have discovered a way to convert indoor light into electricity. First, though, we honor a local veteran. John Bingham served in the U.S. Navy in 2007 and 2008. Parsons, Kansas native was stationed in Iraq, and we salute Petty Officer First Class John Bingham, a four-state hero. Pfizer is aiming for a faster rollout of its coronavirus vaccine. The drug maker says it wants to slash its manufacturing time in half by boosting output in its plants and becoming more efficient in its production process. A new study by NYU researchers found that Pfizer's vaccine does provide a level of protection against the South African strain of the virus. About a third of our nation's small businesses will not be able to survive the pandemic without another round of economic help from the government. That's according to a new Federal Reserve report. And the majority of businesses surveyed, some 88%, say sales have not returned to pre-pandemic levels. As our homes consume more and more power, scientists are working on ways to save you some green while making your house greener. Reporter Ian Lee explains one illuminating concept.
The humble light bulb. It illuminates our homes so we can see in the dark. But what if it could do more? Scientists in England and China had a bright idea.
To convert light that is found indoor, in our homes, in our public buildings and so forth, into electricity.
Vincenzo Petunia and Robert Hoy created devices designed to work like tiny solar panels in your home, to absorb light, turn it into energy, then power everything from remote controls to smoke alarms. You're saying that, the smoke detector alarm going off at 1 in the morning because the battery needs to be changed, that could be a thing of the past.
Yes, exactly.
The idea is for manufacturers to put the flexible miniature panels into electronics, from powering sensors that track packages or tell you when it's time to take your medicine, to devices that haven't even been invented. Scientists say this material is cheaper and greener to make. It could even be sewn into clothing.
Say that you have your solar panel built into the clothing here, and maybe you have a smartwatch or a smartphone, your pocket here, for example, and you're using that solar cell to power that smartphone.
So someday, in the not so distant future, to stay powered up, all you'll have to do is flip on a light. Ian Lee, CBS News, London.
Researchers published their findings about harvesting indoor light in the scientific journal Advanced Energy Materials. Using Twitter may cost you one day. The social media site's reportedly considering adding subscription fees for some features as it looks to diversify revenue beyond ads. According to Bloomberg, the company might charge for services like TweetDeck or using the undo send feature. Final check of that cold forecast next. The CBS Evening News is next, but then on KOAM News at 6, we're going to hear from an area towing company about their call volume of the past few days. Plus, a car repair expert gives advice on what to do if your car does slide off the road into a ditch. And Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes will reportedly have surgery to repair a foot injury. We'll have those details. Stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. Let's take another look at our KOAM News Now Insta poll. Again, we're asking, how do you feel about your school district's weather cancellation policy? So far, 20% say cancels too often, 25% says doesn't cancel enough. The rest, 55%, say the policy is just fine. You do still have time to vote at KOAMnewsnow.com/vote or through the KOAM News Now mobile app. We'll have the final results on the poll on KOAM News at 6. Right now, let's check back with Nick Kelly for another look at the weather.
Blizzard weather advisory is back in effect now because of freezing drizzle that'll pick up this evening and try to mix it with some light sleet and light snow tomorrow, making for tricky roads once again. Highs are 23. Not so active Thursday, quiet Friday before another shot of snow by Saturday.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you for joining us. The CBS Evening News is next. Of course, we're going to be right back here for KOAM News at 6. We'll see you then. In the meantime, please do be careful out there. Let's take care of ourselves and each other.